So in the next section, we're going to look at synthesizing because that is one of the hardest parts, I think, for beginning writers to do. How do I take this information that I found and actually work it into my paper and also still have some kind of original thought so that I'm still writing the paper, that the sources that I'm using are only there to back up what I've said, right? So the first thing is that synthesizing isn't summarizing. Right? Summarizing is where you're just taking what somebody else says and you're putting it into your own words, but you're condensing it down to its major points. Paraphrasing is where you put it into your own words, but you maintain the original kind of length and order. But synthesizing is where you're connecting ideas. So you've got all these diverse kind of sources and you're trying to figure out where they agree, disagree, or offer maybe very different perspectives. So kind of you're categorizing in a way at first, right? You're going to build on research when you synthesize. So you're going to use the evidence you find as a foundation for your own arguments and insights, but you have to have your own argument and insight first. Now, obviously, when we research, we might find things that make us modify our position. It might change our minds, and obviously we would change then. But again, you're not just telling me what other people think. You're saying this is what I think, and here is research to back up my thought. You're not an expert in your field, so you can have ideas, but then you have to show your reader that those ideas have merit by supporting them with that research. So again, you're trying to also create something new. You're putting these sources together in a way to shed light on something in maybe a way that's not been done before. I wouldn't worry so much that you're creating something new, but again, you're not just repeating what other people have said. You've got your own thought, and these people are secondary to you. They're just giving you support. So why bother synthesizing? Well, it creates stronger arguments because you've got that backup, right? It creates a deeper understanding. So you understand the issue better when you learn to synthesize these information, right? You're thinking about what are all these different viewpoints and what do they say? And then you're dealing with them in your paragraph or a section of your essay. Show how all these different groups have different beliefs, but where can we come together, right? Again, it shows critical thinking. Analyzing and evaluating research helps you develop those thinking skills that make you quicker to be able to identify what the problems are, quicker to able to pick up on, wait a second, that sounds a little sketchy, or wow, that's really a strong idea. And then it helps you add insights to your own create your own contributions, right? So how do you do this? Well, first of all, you want to read actively. So you're going to highlight and annotate. Remember, annotate is just making notes, right? So mark the key points, interesting quotes, and then write any questions that you have about that. And those questions might be things that you do other research to find the answers to. I know it sounds like some horrible tumbleweed, right? It just gets bigger and bigger, right? Look for connections, right? How do these various sources support or challenge each other? So if you're trying to figure out why social media should be banned, I mean, there's this reason they're trying to pass a law where they're going to put a warning label on social media like they do on cigarettes, right? Well, is that a good idea? We don't know for sure. So you read multiple sources and you highlight what they say. What are the reasons why they're for or against it? And then you say, okay, well, where do these match up? Well, this source and this source are for it for the same reasons, but they differ in why they think it won't work. So there's a gap there. So who is right? Are they both right? Maybe I need to read a third source and they can provide maybe a link between that. So this is what you're doing when you're looking at the connection and then you're identifying gaps. Then you need to organize your notes, right? So again, summarize the source. By summarizing, you're really gaining an understanding of what that source is. Whereas if you just quote, you might not understand it. So summary is a harder skill, but it is a more valuable skill as a college and professional person, because being able to summarize what someone says and give it back is a lot stronger sometimes than just being able to quote, kind of throwing quotes at people, right? Categorize, again, group your sources by themes, arguments, or perspectives to help. And then again, be able to connect them to see how they relate to each other. Now, make sure you're developing your thesis. So this is kind of that preliminary research. Now you're going to develop that thesis. Or if it's research that you've already gone beyond it, you've got to go back and make sure your thesis doesn't need tweaking, right? So take a stance based on your research. What is your argument or claim? And then be specific. Your thesis has to be clear, concise, and arguable. It's got to have those 3 points. So incorporating research into your writing. So what do you do once you've got all these sources? How do you put it in there? Well, the first thing is you always want to introduce a source, especially the first time you use it. I call this the signal in the master guide to MLA, right? So you're going to identify the author, authors, and then the source. Now, here it's a little kind of be reasonable. If you've got a title that's this long, right, you don't need to identify the source and the author. Oftentimes, you just say the author's names. If you don't have an author, then you use the source. And at times, you can use the author and the source, but you don't want it to be something that's very intrusive. But again, you need to give some kind of heads up that leads into your quotations or your summaries. Now you're going to use quotes and paraphrases or summarizing to include that information in your paper. You don't want to just use all quotes. Rule of thumb is no research paper should be more than 20% quotations. The rest should be your own ideas plus some summary and paraphrase, but mix it up. The MLA guide has a list of reasons why you want to quote. You should have looked over that when you took the MLA test. That's why we take that at the beginning of the semester. So go back and look at those reasons why you want to quote as opposed to summarize or paraphrase. You want to make sure you're properly citing in MLA. Remember, not using MLA, you're going to get like 50% maybe cut off your paper because we only do MLA. If you give me something that's not an MLA, it's highly suspicious. Right? So again, make sure you're doing it properly. Use your master guide. Then you're going to analyze and interpret. It's not just enough to put the stuff in the paper. You got to do something with it to help the reader understand why that is significant. Right? So you're going to explain its significance and you're going to interpret it how it relates to your thesis. The next thing you do is going to add your voice. So you can agree and disagree. You don't have to say, I disagree in that way, because that's kind of boring and too obvious. But you can say, there's some problems with this research, or this research really underscores why this is necessary to do, right? So you can show your agreement or disagreement in a lot of ways other than saying, I disagree or I agree. You can do that, but that's going to be like C-level writing. It's not like A and B plus level writing, right? You're going to offer new insights. So take that and then do something else with it. And then connect it to your personal experience. Now it says, if appropriate, you don't have to connect every piece of research that you do with personal experience, but you have to add that personal connection to this essay. So that might be a way to do that. If a person has set up an issue, you might give an example from your own life that illustrates why that's true, right? So here is an example of a prompt. This is one of the prompts from your assignment, right? Looking at the gig economy, right? And so this is the thesis. The gig economy offers flexibility and autonomy, but its lack of traditional benefits, unpredictable income, and potential for exploitation underscore the need for worker protections and fair compensation. So here is a paragraph where I've identified where the author is doing those different, they're adding the personal experience, they're summarizing, they're analyzing, and it has the quotations. So you can look at this as a guideline for how to put all of that together, right? So please look at that, as well as the sample paper that I've given you for guidance on how you can put all these pieces together seamlessly. So again, remember, synthesis is an ongoing process, right? You're always going to be continue to refine and improve your ideas. So again, that's why we do multiple drafts.